So you can see.
Not European history. What?
Cinco de Mayo has some European history. It was between Mexico and French.
Well, some, but
Some.
I don't think that equates to ancient Rome.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. But it does have to do with Mexico. So there we go. All right. Hey, folks. It is April the 27th. And today we're going to finish up our little lecture on some of the human history, human geography, the history, and also the physical geography of Mexico. Tomorrow we're going to move on to more South America and move on from there. And please keep in mind, though, on Thursday and Friday, that's going to be the days where we're going to, here in class, going to do our presentations over our projects. So there's not going to be a lecture, but at least want to live stream the audio of what your fellow students are saying. Well, no, actually, probably shouldn't do that because not everybody's supposed to actually be recorded. So, okay, well, don't worry about it. Just submit your stuff on Thursday. And next week's EOCs. The week after that, I'll be out for a couple of days for STAR testing. So it's all fun stuff. All fun stuff. All right, so we left off last time. We were talking about how Spain came into contact with the people of Mexico. And this is going to have long-range consequences for these people culturally. Also, as far as the flora and fauna, we're going to see through something we call the Columbian or the Atlantic Exchange, where you're going to have diseases, plants, animals, minerals, and all that other good stuff, and people, of course, go from one side of the world to the other. There's going to be a massive die-off of native peoples within the Americas, largely due to disease. And so though the Spaniards did have advanced materials such as their metalworking, gunpowder, horses, attack dogs, and years of tactics learned through fighting in the Reconquista, it's mostly going to be the diseases that's going to tip things in their favor, especially smallpox. In fact, in the Americas, one of the only known transmittable diseases that the native people had was syphilis. So, whereas the Europeans brought everything you could think of. So,
Fortnite.
All right, so the Spanish conquest. Hernan Cortez, remember, he's a guy who comes over. He's a conquistador from Spain. So he is a hardened warrior, and he's out there looking for some loot. Hernan Cortez with 600 soldiers marched into I can't say it. When I went to grad school, I knew a girl actually, and she was an archaeologist, and in summers she would go work with a team on archaeology at different Aztec and Mayan sites, and that was like a big part of their job was to try to translate hieroglyphs that people haven't quite pieced together yet. But I bet she would probably school me pretty good on this. Yeah, so in 1519, Spaniards destroyed the Aztec Empire within 2 years, and it became a colony of New Spain. And at first, you're going to see they're going to discover so much gold there that was in the hands of the Aztecs. There is going to be a massive looting campaign, and they're actually going to overload boats, shipping this gold initially, and then silver, and also some precious gemstones back to Spain. At first, in particular, many of these people are going to be enslaved. Eventually, after a lot of religious debating, the Spanish Empire will illegalize slavery in name, but you're still going to have something called the encomienda system. It's basically just going to make the natives there into serfs. So it's like one or the other. So New Spain, which is going to be the name for this region, 4 social classes are going to emerge from there. We have the Peninsulares. These are the people who were born in Spain. They're ethnically European, and they're the ones who are going to essentially be in charge. A lot of the ones who are going to come over are going to come over with the mindset of becoming Spanish nobles who are landholders in the New World. It's a pretty typical pattern for people who come to the New World from Europe, is they want to live like the old world lifestyle, but as a noble, because it's the life they know. You have Criollos. And so like a Creole is somebody who, like a Creole language is like a mixed language, right? So when we're talking about Creole in Louisiana, it's a mixture between French and English. Yes, Jose?
So what would happen if there was like a really pale mestizo? Would it be considered Criollos?
I think it would have to go to one to two things. It would have to go with your parentage, and it would also have to do if you could just pull it off, right? Because like there's stories that in the American South of very light-skinned people of African descent passing off as being white and getting out of the slave system and stuff. But from my understanding of Mexican history, it wasn't quite as bad as far as the racial lines went in Mexico as it did as it will in America later on, you know. So Spanish ancestry, born in America. So these are people who are, of course, from Spain, but they're born in the Americas. And as far as culturally going, whenever they go back to the old world for like education or to see family, they're kind of looked down on. They're looked down as kind of like hicks, as hillbillies. English colonies are going to have this problem too. You can have somebody who's ethnically English and they speak English and they go to the Church of England and all this other stuff. But whenever they would go back to England to go to school or visit family members, they would be seen as kind of like backwater hicks, you know, because they come from the colonies. They're not quite as refined. Number three, you have mestizos. These are people of mixed Native American and European ancestry. And then you can have the Indians, these, of course, Aztecs, Mayans, people like that who are there. And of course, you also have mulattoes, people of African and European descent. You're going to also have people from Africa. There's, especially in the Caribbean, you're going to have a lot of people imported from Africa. And then later on in South America, but much more so than Mexico, right? So it's because the Portuguese were still much more into slavery than Spain was. Road to democracy. What events led to the eventual development of democracy in Mexico? Resentment between the classes. So here you're going to have this priest, Father Miguel Hidalgo. He is going to call for an uprising against the Spanish there because a lot of it had to do with overtaxation of farmers. This is going to have a very religious fervor to it. And a lot of these farmers who are going to rise up against the Spanish, they're eventually going to get slaughtered in this war for independence because most of them are just armed with pitchforks and shovels and things like that, like farming implements against the Spanish army. And so it's going to be driven back. However, the movement won't die. Even though they lose their initial push for independence, they're going to come back later on. Independence did not mean democracy, however. It took 100 years to achieve democracy. At the end of the 1800s, Mexico is stable enough to attract foreign capital and industry. You're going to discover oil reserves, but you're going to see that the gap between rich and poor are even bigger and bigger. And that's going to be a major problem in Mexico, is that it's actually, it's a country that has a lot of natural and industrial wealth. But even today, the wealth disparity in Mexico is really great. Some of the richest people in the world actually live in Mexico and own a lot of Mexican property. One of the several actually. Like one in particular, I forgot his name. Well, Soros, he has dual citizenship with America, but I mean Mexico. Like Soros? No, Soros is he's Eastern European. He's he was a child in World War II. He was actually a Nazi collaborator.
Thinking of the wrong person. Who's that person I made my profile picture for the longest time?
I don't remember.
I think I know who you're talking about. Like I can think of the face, right? But I can't remember the name.
Oh, like the richest man in Latin America? What's
Yeah.
his name?
But in any case, yeah, like most of the wealth is like within the top like 0.01% of the population, and it's still like that today. And back then, most of the wealth was, of course, still in the hands of people who were really from Spain. They kind of lived there. You're going to fast forward to the Mexican Revolution, and this is going to be a point in particular when U.S. history and Mexican history is going to kind of go together again, because this is going to be the time of like Pancho Villa. And so this is when, and Pancho Villa was essentially, I guess you would say kind of like a general in a sense, and he spent a lot of his time going up into places like California, trying to collect funds for the revolution, but also trying to garner support. But at the same time, he would attack and kill like American ranchers and stuff like that. So that had people like President Woodrow Wilson send in the army to try to capture him during the Mexican Revolution. And we even had the U.S. Army go into Mexico without their permission to try to catch him, but they could never catch the guy. He's eventually going to be killed by his own boss because he gets too famous for his own good. And so he's killed as a potential rival, which is kind of like one of the dangers of a revolution. Revolutionaries often kill each other. By 1920, a new president and a new constitution is going to emerge.
We can have three constitutions, none of them are fighting for the exact same goal.
Well, you can have the best constitution in the world, but if nobody cares, it's just a piece of paper with pretty words on it. I mean, social conditions. In Mexico, you have rural life. After the revolution, the government began a program of buying out landowners and breaking up large haciendas. And so you see they're trying to have social reforms to try to move away from that old school, like encomienda system where you would have these big wealthy landowners. And what they would do is they would bring in workers, and they started something called the peon system. And the peon system was like this: you're going to work on my ranch, on my hacienda, but instead of paying you money, I'm going to pay you in credit for my store. And so everything you buy comes from the store, but the things cost more than the money you make. So you become indebted to the guy you work for. And so now you're working to pay off your debt, but the debt gets bigger to your boss until you're working the rest of your life paying off the interest and the debt for your boss. And so it's like a form of slavery, really. So yeah, debt peonage was like a big problem in Mexico for a long time, like just basically paying off your credit card to your boss your whole life.
Oh, hey, what's more Catholic than slavery?
Hey, that's not fair.
No, it really isn't.
It's not fair at all. In fact, during this time period, they actually legalized Catholicism. In this time period, they legalized Catholicism in Mexico. And priests were actually executed for saying mass and holding service. Yeah, a lot of people gloss over that. Yeah, Christianity in general was illegalized in Mexico.
What's more Catholic than killing other Catholics?
That's not true either. Stop
They
it.
did that a lot there.
Well, you could say that about anything. You could say that about like Islam. You could say that
Yeah.
about Jews. You could say that about
Not about
Hindus.
They don't kill Jews.
you could say that about
They kill Muslims.
it's a thing, but the thing is that the norm or is that the outlier? Can you say like we're just like out there like constantly doing it? You can say Protestants kill Protestants all the time, especially like in the European wars. It's a massive thing. I mean, you say there's the most dangerous thing to an American is an American.
India's so
I mean, you can like
They're not
that's not fair. That's not fair.
Right now, I'd say that's true.
I agree with
Just
the
say-
Hindus, not Hindus. Or else you get killed.
All right.
I like that utopia.
Yeah, that's like bad logic. All right. So how do you say that? Iotos?
Sure.
Okay. Iotos, farmland owned by members of rural community, practice subsistence farming. And so you're going to see kind of like moving away from cash crops. 1/3 of Mexican farms are latifundios, large commercial farms. And that's true today. So a lot of the fruits and vegetables we have like here in Texas, a lot of them are imported in from Mexico. It's for one reason is that we have a free trade agreement with Mexico and Canada. So we don't tariff each other. It comes in and out. The other thing is their growing seasons are different. So they can grow crops there that might not come up through a lot of America because our climate and temperatures are different.
I need to correct you. It's actually pronounced ejidos, possibly.
Oh, okay, he does.
Avocados caused civil wars in Mexico. Because they take a lot of water. Like way more
Oh,
than
so you have water
people-
shortages?
Yeah, and then like avocado growing companies will move in and take up all the water of the local area. And
They love the
eventually, the goal is
avocados.
to get really sick of it and take up arms and keep the companies up.
Huh. Well, I know here in the States, like here in Texas, you used to have like ranchers would have mini water wars over like for the cattle and stuff like that.
But you know, and avocados are getting more and more popular in the United States.
Yeah, they're really
Causing
trendy.
a lot of conflict in Mexico.
That sucks.
I don't eat avocados.
Well,
Because,
I'll eat it if it's there, but I don't go out of my way to get it.
Avocado are not good.
Strange.
So
So 3-4 million rural families are migrant workers, and of course, it's migrant worker within Mexico and migrant worker, of course, also outside of Mexico. So there's like a big industry here. Of course, the people who come in, work farms, and oftentimes they go back home. At least that's how it was. Like when I was a kid, we always had a lot of that because I grew up around a lot of greenhouses and stuff like that. So we'd have a lot of migrant workers come in, they work the fields, and then they go back to Mexico.
typically, when someone finds a job, they call up their family and everybody they know.
Yeah.
Say, hey, there's work here. And everybody they know will also call someone else and they'll all come to work.
Well, yeah, I remember. Yeah, go ahead. I had a friend, Danny. He's a good friend of mine, and yeah, like I remember, like I was like 12, and I'd go to his house, and his family invited me over for dinner all the time, and he'd have like his uncle who like lived in the room. He's like, "Don't tell anybody, my uncle's here illegally." I'm like, "Okay, I won't tell." You know, so.
Yeah, but we had some roofers like the other day and they were all from a town east of Querétaro.
Oh, so they all knew each other.
Yeah.
I see. Well, I mean, yeah, you wouldn't want to be around a bunch of strangers. That'd be like, I wouldn't want to. That'd be like, not too cool. Urban life. 3/4 of Mexico's population live in the cities. Better opportunity for jobs. Well, yeah, there's a lot of work in the city. Majority of people are very poor, however, so they have a high poverty rate. Economic activity. So yeah. So back in the 90s, this is one of those things that was kind of bipartisan in American politics. I think George H.W. Bush started it, and then Bill Clinton finished it. Essentially, where we had free trade network between in Europe to compete with it. Well, yeah. See, the European Union has a free trade network, but then NAFTA was supposed to be kind of like an answer to it, where like America, Canada, and Mexico would allow one another's transporters to cross borders without restriction, and also no tariffs, taxes, and stuff like that, and fewer regulations on imports and exports between us. Major industries, petroleum, tourism. I don't know what a smokeless industry is. Sounds like I made a nonsense word.
Cancun.
I don't know what a smoke. What on earth is a smokeless industry?
Plastic straws up his feet.
Borders. So maquiladoras. So these are like factories that are along borders that make stuff that's essentially to be imported into America. I think I talked about these a bit yesterday.
Like an American colony.
Well, kind of, yeah. Like a lot of the management for these places will be Americans who might live on the American side and work there. But yeah, a lot of the workers are people who live in Mexico.
We were talking about Cancun.
Okay. Oh, I've always been told it's probably not a place I would want to go to.
No.
I'm not interested. Not interested in that kind of atmosphere or anything. But hey, folks, short and sweet. That's going to end it for today. Please make sure you finish any assignments, thing like that. Yeah, it was a pretty short one. And we're going to come back and talk about some South American countries and the continent tomorrow and all that good stuff. See you later. All right, folks, I'm going to show y'all some videos